The people on the left are all like, we can call him a felon officially. Donald Trump's been sentenced. I want to get to the sentencing, but I want to start with the Supreme Court and the outrage over the Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts siding with the left in the United States Supreme Court. I'm going to say something here and need you to listen to me, and I'm sure someone's going to want to excerpt this and take it out of context. Were I a justice on the United States Supreme Court, I would have sided with John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett and not paused sentencing, and you need to understand why. Because I think that this case, the so-called hush money criminal case in New York, is garbage. And if you postpone sentencing, you could not throw the case out. I would not have taken the case because I want to throw the case out altogether. There is a very famous case from 2016. John Roberts wrote the case. The case is Bob McDonnell versus United States, and it involved the former governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell. He was convicted of honest services fraud and the Hobbs Act. Interestingly enough, the judge and the lawyer, the prosecutor was Jack Smith. The case was whether or not the federal bribery statute involved the actions that McDonnell took under an official act. 7 of the 10 charges were dropped. I'm sorry, 7 of the 10 charges were dropped against Congressman Jefferson based on the outcome of that case. I'm scanning quickly here. Essentially, what Jack Smith argued and what the jury found was that there was a quid pro quo, that money was being given to Bob McDonnell's wife, and then Bob McDonnell was helping a company, tobacco company in Virginia called Star Scientific, I think, something like that. And money was going to Bob McDonnell's wife. McDonnell did not appear to even know about the money going to his wife. And the court held that an official act within the federal bribery statutes does not include merely setting up a meeting or calling another official or hosting an event, which is all Bob McDonnell did. And it was unanimous. John Roberts wrote the decision. But the underlying subtext in that case was that federal prosecutors were stretching federal bribery statutes further than they should be stretched, to the point they were going to tear up the federal bribery statute. And that concerned John Roberts significantly so. That's the case here in New York. If I were a betting man, I would bet the reason Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts refused to take up the sentencing case, the sentencing issue, is because they understand what would happen if you postpone sentencing until after Trump left office. You'd actually put Trump in a more precarious position, because the judge this morning made it clear that part of his underlying reason for nothing, no jail time, no probation, no nothing, was because Trump is going to be president of the United States. So you postpone sentencing until after he's president. Suddenly, that's no longer the thinking of the judge. So Barrett and Roberts actually did Trump a favor, saving him from himself, because Trump would no longer be president when this happened. And also, the appeal would go forward later. No guarantee the Supreme Court would maintain its current 6-3 composition by the time it got there. There's been a lot of hysteria overnight, screaming and crying and belly aching. I've seen people say, I'm going to start calling Amy Coney Barrett Amy Commie Barrett. Why? She actually did Trump a favor. John Roberts did Trump a favor by refusing to postpone sentencing, because by refusing to postpone sentencing, an appeal can now happen. Had they postponed sentencing, there was no way to appeal this case, and this case is a travesty of justice. and it needs to be thrown out. And I think based on John Roberts' concerns in the McDonald case from 2016, a unanimous Supreme Court that included Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, by the way, thought that the Jack Smith was stretching federal bribery statutes so far he was going to tear them up altogether. In this case, the state of New York claimed that Donald Trump violated state law by violating a federal law for which Donald Trump has never been charged with violating, and in fact, the Federal Elections Commission says he had not violated. And what the underlying argument from the judge is that it doesn't matter what the FEC says, and it doesn't matter that Donald Trump wasn't prosecuted, that based on a plain reading of the law, Donald Trump ran afoul of that administrative law in record keeping for his documentation of payment to Stormy Daniels. Therefore, he could be charged with an underlying state statute. That is literally in the entire history of our republic never happened. It has never happened, but they wanted to get Donald Trump. So in trying to get Donald Trump, they stretched a state statute and a federal statute to the point of ripping those statutes. Again, in the entire history of our republic, no one has ever been charged with violating a state law based on violating a federal campaign finance law for which that person was never prosecuted at the federal level. In fact, the federal campaign finance law states specifically that no state can prosecute violations of federal campaign finance law. So this takes it even a further step where you have to have the judge claim a finding of guilt for Trump on a federal statute that the judge is not even allowed to find him guilty on in order to have the state statute. And if the Supreme Court had postponed sentencing for 4 years, they couldn't throw this out. I don't know whether Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts will vote to throw it out. I suspect John Roberts will based on the McDonald case. But what I do know for certain is they couldn't have that opportunity if they postponed sentencing. Donald Trump has to be able to appeal, and he can't appeal until sentencing. So go on and get it over with. I mean, Amy Coney Barrett sided with Donald Trump on the immunity case. I can't imagine she wouldn't side with him here when Amy Coney Barrett is a judge after Antonin Scalia's heart. She was one of his favorite law clerks. And it is very clear from the underlying federal statute that state governments can't prosecute. I don't know how Amy Coney Barrett could justify giving the state the power to prosecute a state charge based on a federal charge when they're not allowed to charge the underlying federal charge. It makes no sense to me that they did it. And the judge and everyone, by the way, every single person justifying the judge is twisting the law and the Constitution in ways they claim Donald Trump does. One of the only honest brokers here is Ellie Honig, who is the Supreme Court or chief legal correspondent for CNN, who's a liberal lawyer in New York who himself has said this case is a travesty of justice. Ellie Honig, who is a progressive on CNN, he's not a conservative. He doesn't like Trump. And even he says that this case should never have been brought. It should have never been tried. The judge got the underlying interpretation of the law flat out, obviously wrong. Major legal commentators on the left and the right have agreed. The Democrats have largely agreed, except they want to be able to call Donald Trump a felon. And today they're all celebrating they get to call Donald Trump a felon. And what does the felony conviction of Donald Trump mean? Nothing. Unconditional discharge. Sounds like some sort of bodily function. So, yeah, the left gets to say Donald Trump will enter office as a felon, but they've been calling him a felon for a while. They've called him a rapist and gotten sued for it. They'll be able to call him a felon, but it doesn't matter. There's going to be no probation. There's going to be no sentencing. There's going to be no burden. There'll be a financial burden. That's about it. This was all smoke and mirrors because the left wanted Donald Trump's scalp. And they'll be able to start officially calling him a felon, something they've already called him, and that's it. That's it. And now, because of what John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett did, the Supreme Court will be able to get this case and dismiss it and throw it all out, which they should do, because it's always been an overreach.